Hello, chemistry students. This is Mr. Lawrence, just making a short video for the Day 5 notes of Nomenclature. I know a lot of y'all were out at the UIL band competition. Congratulations on qualifying and making it that far. If you're one of those people, or otherwise, if you just missed yesterday, you just need to watch this video real quick and be prepared for the test tomorrow, Wednesday, the 7th of November. So Day 5, we're talking about covalent compounds. This is page 15 of your packet. So far, everything else we've talked about has been an ionic compound. All right, the difference is covalent compounds are made up of all nonmetals. So there is no metal in a covalent compound. That's different than an ionic compound. So an ionic compound, for example, would be something like FeCl3, okay, because an ionic compound is going to have two parts. The first part is always going to be a metal, and the second part is going to be a non-metal. So if you had a test question that just said, is this ionic or covalent, you know it's ionic because the first element is a metal. Remember, the metals are all of the elements that are to the left of this bold stair-step line, except for hydrogen. Hydrogen is the only non-metal that's on this side of the table. Okay, so this would be an example of an ionic compound. And when you have an ionic compound, the thing you always want to do, whether you're writing a name or you're writing a formula, is you always want to balance the charges, and that's nothing new. We've been doing that all last week. But if I was trying to write the name of this, I would balance out the negative charge. So like I know there's 3 chlorines. Each chlorine is -1. And I have iron, which is going to be, I could figure out it's +3. Okay? But if I'm doing a covalent compound, well, how would I know it's covalent? Might be something like SO3, right? Sulfur is a nonmetal. Oxygen also is a nonmetal. So it's made up of only nonmetals. Only nonmetals. So that tells me that this is a covalent compound. All right. So when you name a covalent compound, you name the first element and then the second one, and you still change the ending to IDE, which is nothing new. So like, for example, oxygen would change. It would change the ending of it to oxide, right? So you use, this is the important thing, you use a prefix to designate how many atoms of each element you have. So this last part, molecular compounds, contain what are called covalent bonds and are formed when elements share valence electrons. Ionic compounds transfer valence electrons, so you end up with like a positive or a negative charge, but covalent bonds happen when elements simply share their electrons to meet the octet rule. But you don't have to crisscross, or you don't have to balance charges with covalent compounds, because really there are no charges. There's no reducing. You don't have to simplify a formula, and you always use prefixes. These are the 10 prefixes you have to know. They're already written in your packet, and most of them are words that you've already seen. You already know what number they refer to. Mono is 1, di is 2, tri is 3, etc. The only ones that I'll highlight kind of that you might not know, tetra. Tetra is 4. You might not know hepta. Hepta is 7. All right, and then nana. You may not have heard of that either, but nana sounds like 9, so it's easy to remember too. The other ones are pretty familiar to most people. All right, so you'll see on the examples, when you write the name of a covalent compound, you'll notice that it looks the same as it did before, like phosphorus oxide. That's still there, but you have these prefixes that are added. See the di prefix in front of phosphorus? That's because there's two phosphorus atoms in the formula, so you have to put di as a prefix in. And then pent is the prefix for 5, and that's because you have 5 oxygen atoms. All right, so the formula tells you exactly what to put for the name. All right, you'll notice the second example, carbon tetrachloride. Notice that carbon does not have a prefix. There's nothing in front of carbon, and that is because you never have to use mono if mono is the first element. All right, if there's only one of the first element, you don't use mono. right? So you don't call it monocarbon tetrachloride, you just call it carbon tetrachloride. All right, this would be S2O3, which is called disulfur, and then trioxide. NO2, N is nitrogen. Okay, and you don't have to put mono again because nitrogen is the first element, so you just leave the prefix off. And then you put di in front of oxide because you have two oxygen atoms. CO, C is carbon. You do not have to put mono in front of carbon because it's the first element, but you do have to put mono in front of oxide, so you would call this carbon monoxide. Again, there's a note there. Mono is omitted, meaning you leave it out if the first element only has one atom, right? So notice again, there was no mono in front of nitrogen or carbon there, but the second element always has to have a prefix, even if it's mono. So here, you're just translating the numbers, you're translating the name into a formula, and that's super easy to do because all you're doing is you're looking at the prefixes, right? So in this case, I've got two of each, dinitrogen dioxide, so that's N2O2, right? I don't simplify it, I don't change it, I just keep it exactly like the name tells me to. This next one, I got diphosphorus heptoxide, so there's 2 phosphorus, and there must be 7 oxygens, because hepto is the prefix for 7 up here. And then the last one, I've got tetrasulfur, so 4 sulfur atoms and 4 nitrogen atoms, so S4N4, and again, I don't simplify it. All right, there is some extra practice homework for these, all right, but again, they're pretty easy. The important thing for the test is just to make sure you don't accidentally mix up and start putting prefixes for your metals, because remember, covalent compounds only contain nonmetals. So it's not like you would name, like, for example, let's say BeCl2. All right, you would not call this beryllium dichloride because this is an ionic compound. You do not use prefixes, so this would still just be called beryllium chloride. All right, you only use this list of prefixes here with covalent molecules, which are only made up of elements on this side of the periodic table. All right, so just a reminder again, the test coming up is on Wednesday. This review says it's due today, Tuesday, but since I was out yesterday and I know a lot of you missed the last couple of days, I will take this tomorrow on the test day. I will accept this Wednesday, November 7th. All right, because just getting the lesson to you now, but it is 2 pages, so page 17 and 18. All right, and just a reminder to bring your periodic tables because you are allowed to have those on the test. So thank you for watching, and good luck studying for the test tomorrow.